Maria Santos trusted order more than people. The Dubai investor trusted money more than consequences. Maria Santos was known as the kind of woman people trusted without hesitation. In her mid-30s, she had spent more than a decade climbing the demanding ladder of the hospitality industry, starting from the front desk and slowly earning her place as a hotel manager in one of Manila's busiest business districts. She believed in rules, routines, and reputation. Every morning began the same way, reviewing occupancy reports, checking staff attendance, and walking the property to ensure everything looked flawless. Guests rarely remembered her face, but they always remembered how smoothly their stay went. Her life outside work was quiet and carefully controlled. She lived alone in a modest apartment close to the hotel, avoiding unnecessary attention. Friends described her as private, not lonely, a woman who preferred order over chaos. She avoided office gossip and kept clear boundaries with employees and guests alike. To many, Maria represented stability in an industry known for excess and temptation. Yet beneath that discipline was a growing sense of restlessness she never spoke about. Years of responsibility had taught her how to hide emotion behind efficiency. Long hours and constant pressure left little room for personal dreams, and she told herself that sacrifice was the price of success. She believed that if she maintained control, nothing could touch her. What no one realized was that this confidence rested on fragile ground. Maria's need for control made her vulnerable to the one thing she never planned for: attention that felt personal, validating, and different from the predictable world she managed so well. That quiet vulnerability would soon draw her toward a decision that unraveled everything she had built. The investor first appeared like any other high-profile guest, arriving with minimal luggage and a preference for privacy. His name was registered through a corporate account, and his visits followed no fixed pattern, sometimes weeks apart, sometimes back-to-back. He requested the same upper-floor suite each time, overlooking the city skyline, and asked that housekeeping be limited. Maria approved the arrangements personally, treating it as part of her duty to accommodate important clients. He stood out not because he demanded attention, but because he avoided it. He rarely used public hotel spaces and conducted his meetings elsewhere. Payments were always cleared in advance, generous and unquestioned. Over time, Maria noticed how smoothly his stays passed, with no complaints and no complications. Their interactions remained professional, but familiarity grew through repetition. A brief nod became recognition. Recognition became comfort. During later visits, he extended small courtesies that felt harmless: private compliments on the hotel's efficiency, appreciation for how quietly his needs were handled. Maria, unused to personal acknowledgement, found herself absorbing the praise more deeply than she expected. The line between guest and manager slowly blurred, not through sudden action, but through patience and proximity. She learned he lived between cities and described Dubai as his base. His life sounded expansive and untethered, a sharp contrast to her rigid routine. Each visit left a lingering presence, a disruption in her carefully ordered days. She began adjusting her schedule to be available during his stays, justifying it as professionalism. What Maria could not see was how uneven the balance already was. The investor controlled the pace, the secrecy, and the story he chose to tell. By the time she felt the connection mattered, the foundation of it had already been built on omission. The truth surfaced quietly, without confrontation or warning. Late one night, while reviewing guest feedback linked to corporate accounts, Maria noticed a familiar name connected to an overseas business profile. Curiosity led her beyond official systems and into the open web, where fragments began to align in unsettling ways. Photographs showed the investor at formal events, standing beside a woman and two children, all carefully dressed and publicly acknowledged. The captions spoke of anniversaries, family milestones, and long-term partnerships rooted in Dubai. At first, Maria convinced herself there must be an explanation. Business associates were often mistaken for family, and public images could be misleading. But deeper searches revealed property records, company filings, and travel patterns that confirmed a stable married life. The realization arrived not as shock, but as a slow tightening in her chest. Every past interaction replayed with new meaning, and small inconsistencies she had ignored suddenly felt deliberate. She did not confront him or alert anyone. Instead, she retreated inward, carrying the knowledge alone. The secrecy that once felt mutual now felt imposed. She noticed how carefully he avoided personal details, how questions about his life dissolved into vague statements. What she had believed was discretion now appeared as control. Maria attempted to restore distance, reducing contact and returning to strict professionalism. Yet the emotional investment had already taken hold. The attention she once found affirming now felt manipulative, but breaking away seemed complicated by fear of exposure and professional risk. The relationship had shifted into something unbalanced, where truth existed on one side only, and silence became the cost of staying connected. The exposure arrived without warning and spread faster than Maria could contain it. An anonymous message reached the hotel's corporate office early one morning, detailed and precise. It included dates of the investors' stays, internal access logs, and images that suggested an inappropriate relationship. By midday, senior management demanded explanations, and Maria was removed from her duties pending investigation. The efficiency she had built her career on offered no protection once doubt entered the system. Within hours, the atmosphere around her shifted. Colleagues avoided eye contact, conversations stopped when she entered rooms, and security access was quietly restricted. The investor's name vanished from upcoming reservations, and his corporate account was marked inactive. Attempts to reach him failed. What had once felt like a private complication now unfolded as a public threat to her livelihood. Rumors filled the gaps left by silence. Some believed she had abused her position, others suspected she was being used. Maria provided a formal statement, careful and restrained, revealing little. The process was clinical, but the weight of judgment was constant. Every decision she had made was re-examined, every professional success questioned. As the days passed, pressure intensified beyond the workplace. Unfamiliar numbers called her phone, stopping just short of leaving messages. Online searches of her name began to surface distorted versions of events. The stability she depended on fractured quickly, replaced by uncertainty she could not control. By the end of the week, Maria understood that the scandal had created an imbalance she could not correct. Her silence offered no protection, and speaking risked further damage. The exposure had not only ended a secret but stripped away the structure that kept her life intact. Something irreversible had begun, and she was already losing ground. The night Maria disappeared followed no dramatic pattern, which later made it even more unsettling. She completed her final administrative tasks with precision, submitted pending reports, and left the office at her usual time. Security footage showed her walking through the lobby alone, posture steady, expression unreadable. She did not appear rushed or distressed. To anyone watching, it was an ordinary departure at the end of an exhausting week. Outside, the city moved as it always did, loud and indifferent. Maria did not answer messages sent to her phone that evening, something friends later described as unusual. She was known for brief but reliable check-ins, especially during stressful periods. That night, there was nothing. No calls, no activity, no digital trace after a certain hour. The following morning, her absence triggered concern when she failed to respond to official inquiries related to the investigation. By noon, her car was located near a quiet coastal road far from her apartment. It was parked carelessly, not aligned with the curb. The doors were unlocked, and her purse lay on the passenger seat. Her identification was inside, but her phone was missing. There were no signs of violence. No broken glass, no blood, no witnesses who recalled seeing her arrive or leave. The area offered long stretches without cameras, creating blind spots impossible to fill later. What unsettled investigators most was the lack of chaos. Everything suggested interruption rather than escape. Maria had vanished between familiar routines and unanswered messages. In a city crowded with people and surveillance, she disappeared as if someone had carefully chosen the one moment when no one was looking. The investigation moved quickly at first, driven by public pressure and the unresolved scandal surrounding Maria's disappearance. Detectives began by mapping her final movements, comparing traffic cameras, transaction logs, and phone data. The timeline narrowed to a small window, yet within that window the trail fractured. Her phone had gone offline abruptly, with no pings beyond the last known location near the coast. Financial records introduced the first contradiction. Days before she vanished, a large sum had been deposited into Maria's account from an overseas source routed through multiple intermediaries. The amount was far beyond her savings and inconsistent with her salary. She had not spent it, transferred it, or acknowledged it. The transaction raised immediate questions about motive and planning. At the same time, immigration databases showed the investor departing the country within hours of Maria's disappearance. His travel appeared routine, booked in advance, and legally clean. Authorities requested cooperation through formal channels, but responses were delayed and limited. No direct evidence placed him at the scene, and jurisdictional boundaries slowed progress. Physical evidence offered little clarity. A damaged mobile phone was discovered days later near an abandoned industrial area miles away. Fire had destroyed most of its components, and the remaining data was unreadable. Investigators could not conclusively link it to Maria, yet the timing aligned too closely to ignore. With each lead pointing in opposing directions, the case split. One theory suggested careful preparation and voluntary disappearance aided by money and timing. The other implied external involvement, financial leverage, and deliberate erasure. Neither path offered resolution, only deeper uncertainty. As weeks passed, attention shifted from Maria's movements to the money that appeared just before she vanished. Forensic accountants traced the transfer through a network of shell companies registered in multiple countries. Each entity existed only on paper, designed to blur ownership and intent. The pattern matched methods used to quietly resolve liabilities without legal exposure. The source pointed indirectly toward business interests connected to the investor, though nothing carried his name. Investigators examined Maria's personal records for signs of preparation. Her apartment showed no indication of packing or long-term planning. Clothes remained in closets, documents untouched, and personal items undisturbed. There was no farewell message, no emptied accounts, no sign she intended to abandon her life. Yet the unexplained transfer contradicted that image, suggesting knowledge or involvement she never shared. Witness statements added another layer. A dock worker reported seeing a woman resembling Maria near the port on the night she disappeared, accompanied by a man whose face was obscured by poor lighting. Surveillance in the area was incomplete, leaving only partial confirmation of movement without identity. The encounter hinted at coordination rather than chance. Meanwhile, legal inquiries abroad stalled. Requests for detailed financial cooperation were met with procedural delays. The investors' businesses continued operating, unaffected by the investigation. Public attention faded, replaced by newer scandals, while the case quietly lost momentum. The evidence no longer suggested a single event, but a sequence of calculated actions. Whether Maria participated willingly or was maneuvered into silence remained unclear. What became evident was the imbalance of power, where money shaped outcomes and truth struggled to surface. The closer investigators looked, the less certain they became about who was controlling the narrative. The case slowly slipped into silence, not because answers were found, but because none could be proven. Maria Santos was officially listed as missing, her file marked active but untouched for months at a time. Investigators revisited the evidence again and again, yet every path ended in speculation. Without a body, the law could not move forward. Without witnesses, truth remained out of reach. Life continued around the absence. The hotel renovated its lobby, changed management, and erased reminders of scandal. New employees never learned her name. To the public, the story became just another headline from the past, replaced by newer mysteries. Only occasional online discussions revived interest, fueled by leaked documents and theories that led nowhere. Some believed Maria had escaped, using the money to disappear into another country, choosing anonymity over disgrace. Others believed she never had a choice, that powerful interests ensured her silence to protect reputations and businesses worth millions. Both possibilities carried weight, yet neither brought peace. What unsettled those closest to the case was how easily the world adjusted. A woman with routines, goals, and a future vanished, and the system absorbed the loss without consequence. No final message explained her actions. No evidence confirmed her fate. In the end, Maria became a symbol rather than a person. Her disappearance exposed how secrets, wealth, and imbalance can erase lives without violence or noise. The unanswered questions lingered longer than the investigation itself. Somewhere between exposure and silence, a life ended, or continued unseen, leaving behind only uncertainty and a story that refused to close.